April 3, 1971, Nashville Municipal Auditorium. What started as a friendly tribute concert turned into one of the most powerful spiritual moments in music history. Johnny Cash, in front of 8,000 people and live television cameras, challenged Elvis Presley to do something he hadn't done in years: sing gospel. What happened next didn't just move the audience to tears, it broke Johnny Cash completely, right there on stage, and created a moment so sacred that the recording was kept locked away for decades. The Nashville Municipal Auditorium was packed beyond capacity. 8,000 people had squeezed into a space designed for 6,000, and millions more were watching on television. This was the Gospel Music Association's annual awards ceremony, a night when the biggest names in country and gospel music came together to celebrate faith through song. Elvis sat in the third row, wearing a black suit with a high collar, his signature sunglasses hiding eyes that hadn't slept well in months. He'd been invited as a guest, not a performer. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had made that very clear. Elvis was there to support the gospel community, to be seen, but not to perform. He was in the middle of his Vegas residency, exhausted from 2 shows a night, and Parker didn't want him taking on any extra commitments. But Elvis had insisted on coming. Gospel music wasn't just music to him. It was home. It was his mother's voice singing hymns in their tiny Tupelo house. It was church services, where for a few hours, being poor didn't matter because everyone was equal before God. It was the only music that still felt pure to him, untouched by the machinery of fame and commerce. Johnny Cash was on stage, having just finished performing with the Statler brothers. He was in a good period of his life, recently married to June Carter, fighting his way back from years of addiction and self-destruction. Gospel music had been part of his recovery, a way to reconnect with something bigger than himself. As the applause died down, Johnny did something unexpected. Instead of leaving the stage, he walked to the microphone and spoke directly to the audience. "You know, we have someone very special with us tonight," Johnny said, his deep voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. "Someone who, before he was the king of rock and roll, was a gospel singer. Someone whose voice can move mountains when he lets it." Elvis shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He knew where this was going. Johnny continued, "Elvis Presley is here tonight, ladies and gentlemen." The audience erupted in applause. Cameras swung toward Elvis, catching him on the big screens flanking the stage. He smiled and waved, but his heart was pounding.
"Now, I know Elvis came here as a guest," Johnny said, a slight smile on his face. "But I also know that this man has one of the greatest gospel voices God ever put on this earth. And I think it's a shame that the world doesn't get to hear it anymore." The audience murmured in agreement. Elvis could feel every eye in the building on him. Johnny looked directly at Elvis, his expression serious now. "Elvis, I'm gonna do something here. I'm gonna dare you, brother. I dare you to come up here and remind us all why gospel music matters. I dare you to sing the way you used to sing in church before any of this fame and fortune. I dare you to sing for your mama." The mention of his mother hit Elvis like a physical blow. Gladys Presley had died in 1958, 13 years ago, and Elvis still couldn't think about her without feeling like his chest was being crushed. She had loved gospel music more than anything. She'd raised him on it, surrounded him with it, made sure he understood that no matter how far he went in life, gospel was where truth lived. The auditorium was completely silent, waiting for Elvis's response. He could feel the television cameras on him, could sense the expectation in the room. Part of him wanted to refuse, to smile and shake his head, to maintain the boundary between Elvis the Vegas performer and Elvis the person. But another part of him, a deeper part, was already standing up. Elvis rose from his seat slowly. The audience gasped, then burst into applause. He made his way down the aisle toward the stage, his legs feeling heavy, his mind racing. He hadn't sung gospel in public in years, not since his mother died. Every time he tried, the emotion was too much. It felt like opening a wound that had never properly healed. Johnny met him at the stage steps, reaching down to help him up. As their hands clasped, Johnny leaned in close and whispered something only Elvis could hear. "I know this is hard, brother, but we need this. I need this. Sing us back to who we really are." Elvis looked into Johnny's eyes and saw something there that surprised him. Desperation. Pain. Despite all his success, despite his marriage to June and his apparent recovery, Johnny was still struggling, still fighting his demons, still searching for something to hold on to. Elvis nodded slowly and walked to the center of the stage. The house band was ready, waiting for his signal, but Elvis waved them off. "If I'm going to do this," he said into the microphone, his voice quiet, "I'm going to do it the way my mama taught me. Just voice, just faith, just truth."
The auditorium fell silent again. Elvis closed his eyes, and for a moment he was back in Tupelo, standing in the First Assembly of God Church, 8 years old, listening to his mother's voice blending with the choir. He could almost smell the old wood of the pews, feel the summer heat, hear the rustle of paper fans moving in the congregation. When Elvis opened his mouth and began singing Amazing Grace, something in the room shifted. This wasn't Elvis the performer. This wasn't the practiced, professional delivery of a trained vocalist. This was something raw, more real. His voice cracked on the first line, wavered on the second, but kept going. Each word carried weight, carried memory, carried 13 years of grief and guilt and longing. Johnny Cash stood at the side of the stage watching, and within 30 seconds, tears were streaming down his face. He hadn't expected this. He'd challenged Elvis, thinking it would be a powerful moment, a reminder of shared roots. But this was something else entirely. This was a man singing his way through heartbreak, using gospel as the only language strong enough to contain his pain. The cameras captured it all. Elvis, center stage, eyes closed, voice breaking and rebuilding with each phrase. Johnny off to the side, openly weeping. The audience, 8,000 people sitting in absolute silence, many of them crying too. And beyond the auditorium, millions of television viewers watching something they'd never seen before. Elvis Presley, completely vulnerable, completely honest, completely human. As Elvis moved through the verses, something remarkable happened. His voice grew stronger, more certain. The wavering stopped. The cracks healed. It was as if the act of singing through the pain was actually healing something inside him. The wound he'd been protecting for 13 years was finally being allowed to breathe. Johnny couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore. He walked to center stage, standing beside Elvis, and began singing harmony. Their voices blended, Johnny's deep bass supporting Elvis's soaring tenor, creating a sound that was both mournful and hopeful, both broken and whole. When they reached the final verse, something unexpected happened. Elvis opened his eyes, turned to Johnny, and sang directly to him, not to the audience, not to the cameras, to Johnny. And in that moment, 8,000 people and millions of television viewers witnessed something sacred, one broken man offering healing to another broken man through song. The song ended. For several seconds, there was no sound at all. Then, slowly, people began to stand, not to applaud, just to stand, a silent acknowledgement of what they'd witnessed. Even the television crew was standing, cameras still rolling, but operators wiping their eyes. Johnny and Elvis stood facing each other on stage. Johnny's face was wet with tears, his shoulders shaking. Elvis reached out and pulled him into a hug, and Johnny collapsed against him, sobbing. "Thank you," Johnny whispered, barely audible. "Thank you for saving my life tonight."
Elvis held him tighter. "You saved mine, brother. You dared me to remember who I am." They stood there, two of the biggest names in music history, holding each other up in front of thousands of people. And nobody moved, nobody applauded. Everyone just stood in silent witness to this moment of genuine human connection. Finally, June Carter walked onto the stage. She came to Johnny, gently touched his shoulder, and he released Elvis and turned to her. She wrapped her arms around her husband, and he buried his face in her shoulder, still crying. Elvis watched them, feeling something shift inside himself. He saw the way June held Johnny, the way she provided strength without judgment, the way she loved him through his brokenness. Elvis turned to the audience and spoke into the microphone, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I want to thank Johnny for reminding me tonight that some things are bigger than fame, bigger than success, bigger than any of this." He gestured around the auditorium. "My mama used to tell me, 'Elvis, don't ever forget where you come from. Don't ever forget that God gave you that voice for a reason.' I think maybe I forgot that for a while, but tonight, Johnny helped me remember." He paused, looking at Johnny, who had composed himself enough to stand upright again. "And I want to say something else. What we just did up here, that's what gospel music is supposed to be. It's not about being perfect. It's not about hitting every note. It's about being real, being honest, being willing to be broken in front of each other so we can help each other heal." The audience finally began to applaud, but it was different from typical concert applause. It was slower, more deliberate, almost ceremonial. Elvis and Johnny stood side by side, arms around each other's shoulders, acknowledging the crowd not as performers, but as fellow travelers on a difficult journey. Backstage after the show, the two men sat together in Elvis's dressing room. The door was closed, security keeping everyone else out. They didn't talk much at first, just sat in the quiet, processing what had happened. Finally, Johnny spoke. "I almost didn't make that dare, you know? I almost chickened out." "Why did you?" Elvis asked. Johnny was quiet for a moment. "Because I saw myself in you out there. I saw a man drowning in his own success, suffocating under the weight of what everyone expects him to be. And I thought, if I can get him to sing gospel, really sing it, maybe it'll remind both of us that we're more than what they made us." Elvis nodded slowly. "It worked. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 13 years, ever since Mama died. And tonight, for the first time, I could finally breathe again." He looked at Johnny. "Thank you for being brave enough to dare me. Thank you for seeing me."
Johnny smiled, tired but genuine. "That's what brothers do, Elvis. They see each other. They call each other out. They dare each other to be better." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer. Then Johnny said, "You know they recorded that, right? The whole thing. Every camera in that place caught it." Elvis's expression shifted. "Yeah, Parker's gonna be furious." Johnny shook his head. "Forget Parker. That recording is important, Elvis. People need to see that. They need to know that the biggest stars in the world are still human, still struggling, still searching for meaning." But Elvis wasn't so sure. "I don't know, Johnny. It feels too personal, too raw." Johnny understood. "Then we lock it away. We make sure it doesn't get released until we're both ready, or maybe until we're both gone,
and it can be our gift to the future, proof that we were real people, not just legends. They agreed that night to keep the recording private. The Gospel Music Association, respecting their wishes, locked the master tapes in a vault. Only a few bootleg copies, filmed by audience members, circulated in the years that followed. But the people who were there that night never forgot what they witnessed. For Johnny Cash, that night became a turning point. Years later, in interviews, he would cite that performance as one of the moments that helped him stay clean. "Elvis showed me that night that vulnerability isn't weakness," Johnny said in a 1990 interview. "He showed me that the strongest thing you can do is admit you're broken and ask for help. I carried that lesson with me every day of my sobriety." For Elvis, the impact was more complicated. He returned to Vegas, to the grueling schedule, to the pills and the pressure, but something had changed. In his private moments, away from the crowds and the cameras, he sang gospel more often. His close friends noticed that he seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. He talked about his mother more freely, sharing memories rather than hiding from them. The official recording remained locked away for decades. It wasn't until 2003, 26 years after Elvis's death and 3 years after Johnny's passing, that their estates agreed to release it. When it finally came out, it became one of the most significant gospel recordings in history, not because of technical perfection, but because of its absolute authenticity. Music historians and theologians have studied that performance extensively. Dr. James Martin, writing in Rolling Stone in 2005, called it the moment when two icons stripped away everything but truth. No showmanship, no artifice, just two human beings using the only language powerful enough to express their pain and their hope: gospel music.
The performance won a posthumous Grammy, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the millions of people who heard it and saw themselves in Elvis's broken voice and Johnny's tears. People struggling with addiction, with grief, with the weight of expectations, with the gap between who they were and who everyone needed them to be. There's a bootleg video that circulates online, filmed by an audience member that night. The quality is poor, the angle is bad, but you can see everything that matters. You can see Elvis's face as he sings, the way 13 years of grief pour out of him. You can see Johnny's collapse, the way his whole body shakes with sobs. You can see June's tender approach, the way she holds her husband through his breaking. And you can see the audience standing in silent reverence, understanding they're witnessing something holy. Today, that performance is taught in music schools, not as an example of technical excellence, but as a masterclass in authenticity. Students watch it and learn that the most powerful performances aren't about perfection, they're about truth. They're about being brave enough to be fully human in front of others. The dare that Johnny Cash made that night wasn't just a challenge to sing a song. It was a dare to be real, to be vulnerable, to remember that beneath all the fame and success, they were still just two boys from the South who'd grown up singing in church, believing that music could save them. And for one night, in front of thousands of witnesses, they proved that belief was right. Music could save them. Not the commercial music, not the manufactured hits, but the raw, honest gospel truth that reminded them who they really were.